good people? You are now listening to another episode of Since We Last Spoke with Danny Foxworth. I am your humble narrator, Danny Foxworth, and this one is kind of a special episode. Shout out to my dog, 12 Kyle, from the 12 Kyle podcast. I had him on here recently. We talked about the year 1992, so check out that episode if you haven't already. But I was listening to his latest episode, and he basically did a remix of the podcast that I'm a big fan of called the Eclectic Discussion Podcast. And he talked about what the experience of going to the mall was like back in the 80s. And 12 Kyle actually did a remix of that episode, basically talking about his experience of going to the mall in the 80s. And I was like, you know what? It would be cool to do a remix episode, but I never really felt as compelled to do a remix episode as I did after hearing Kyle's episode. So what I'm going to do is basically remix the remix and share what my experience was like going to the mall in the 80s. So for me, I'm several years younger than both Eclectic and 12 Kyle. So they were teenagers in the 80s. I was still in elementary school. So for me, I couldn't just come and go as I pleased and just like do stuff unsupervised. I had to go with either my parents or I would go with my Uncle Gilbert to the mall. So down here in Moncks Corner, South Carolina, which is really like the greater Charleston area, it's like 30 minutes away from Charleston. In the greater Charleston area, back in the 80s, we actually had 4 malls total. But the mall that we frequented the most was Northwoods Mall, which is in North Charleston, South Carolina. But we also had Charlestown Square Mall, which was also in North Charleston. And then about 15 minutes away from that was a city called West Ashley, South Carolina. And they had 2 malls. They had Citadel Mall and they had Ashley Plaza Mall. But we never went to Ashley Plaza Mall, and we may have gone to Citadel Mall once. We never really ventured farther than North Charleston back in the 80s. That's just how we rolled. But we spent the majority of our Saturdays at Northwoods Mall. And hearing 12 Kyle talk about his experience and just hearing those similarities with those experiences. And we're going to get into all of that stuff. So at Northwoods Mall, we were anchored by 4 department stores. Actually, we didn't have a JCPenney yet. JCPenney didn't arrive in Northwoods Mall until I think it was the 90s. We got a JCPenney at Northwoods Mall. But in the 80s, we were anchored by Sears. We had Belk, which is a department store that's based in Charlotte, but all the stores are basically in North and South Carolina. Then we had a local department store called Kerrison's. And then we had Tallheimers, which eventually became Dillard's. And I remember we would hit up one of those department stores. Mom would go there to check out what perfumes they had, and she would cop a bottle. And I actually took a bottle of my mom's perfume and drank it while she was at work. That's a whole nother story for another day. But I remember Mom going to get her perfume from those department stores. And we actually had a movie theater that was also in that mall. It's hard to believe it was that long ago that we actually had a movie theater. And then they shut that down and opened a movie theater across the street. And some of the favorite places we used to go to as far as department stores was Woolworth. I don't know if y'all had a Woolworth in your mall in the 80s, but man, on Sundays, they would have this special on candy, and you could get that's where you could get like 50 blow pops for like $5. It's a wonder I still have teeth. The amount of money I used to blow on, pun intended, used to blow on those blow pops at Woolworth. And of course, the weight of my heart is through my stomach. And we had no shortage of food options at Northwoods Mall. And a lot like what 12 Kyle was mentioning, he's from Florence, South Carolina, and their mall is Magnolia Mall. And in the 80s, they didn't have a food court. And in the 80s, we also did not have a food court at Northwoods Mall. But like I said, there was no shortage of places to eat. You had Backstage Deli. You had Orange Julius. I never understood the appeal of Orange Julius. Their Orange Julius's is disgusting. I tried it out of curiosity, and seeing the process of them making the Orange Julius, that buyer's remorse set in immediately. I didn't get one until later on in life. I just wanted to see what the craze was about. But then I see them pour the orange juice and then crack a raw egg and put that in a blender with the OJ. Then they added some other stuff. I was like, yeah, I know I'm not going to like this. But anyway, we had Chick-fil-A, which was the mainstay. We had the Chick-fil-A in Northwoods Mall since the 80s. The Chick-fil-A is still in Northwoods Mall, but I don't think they're open anymore. We actually had a Burger King. We had a Taco Bell that was across from it. And I swear there was a bakery right next to the Burger King. I want to say it was called Tiffany's Bakery. Never ate there, but man, every time I would walk past that bakery and just smell that sweet fragrance of those freshly baked cinnamon raisin rolls, and my mouth would get to watering. And I just never had the privilege of eating those cinnamon raisin rolls as I walked past the bakery. But my favorite place to eat, I actually had two, but my favorite place to eat was a spot right across from that Burger King called Corn Dog on a Stick. And the menu was very simple, and the menu was also very effective. I would go there, I would just get a corn dog, and that doggone lemonade was incredible. Oh my God. That lemonade was so good. I don't know what secret additives that they put in that lemonade, but man, that thing had a hold on me. Every Saturday when we would go to Northwoods Mall, that's what I wanted to get. It was corn dog on a stick and the Hickory Farm booth in the middle of the mall. You had the lady in the food court nowadays with the tray of bourbon chicken samples, like I talked about in the last episode. We had a lady that was standing right outside of the Hickory Farm booth, and she would have a tray with toothpick samples of like salami and summer sausage and just various types of cheese. And that was always a good time. And then in the Christmas time, mom would get the pack of summer sausage and she would get some cheeses from Hickory Farm. Man, we had it good. Man, we had it good back in the 80s. And Kyle also mentioned the clothing stores in his mall. And we had similar clothing stores in Northwoods Mall. And he mentioned Jeans West and them selling airbrush t-shirts. I always wanted an airbrush t-shirt. I never had the privilege of getting one. I used to beg and plead with my mom to get me an airbrush shirt. You're like, you got airbrush t-shirt money? No. Well, we ain't not getting no airbrush t-shirt then. All right. And we had Jeans West and other stores that we would go to get fresh for the summer / first day of school. And a lot of times, if I didn't go to the mall with my parents, I would go to the mall with my Uncle Gilbert, which that was always a lot of fun, just getting to hang out with him. So it would just be the two of us. And him being in his 20s at the time, mission for him was to always get fresh. And that was always fun, just seeing the clothes he would buy. And then you have this impressionable young brain. And you like, when I grow up, I want to dress just like my Uncle Gilbert because he always stayed in the freshest threads. And outside of Jeans West, me and him, we had Oak Tree, we had Merry-Go-Round, and we had Chess King. And sometimes my parents were like, no, we're not getting that for you. Sometimes you like, yo, you know what? I like that. That would look good on you, Bo. Go ahead and get that. Put that in the bag. And shout out to my Uncle Gilbert. God rest his soul. He used to hook me up, man. And also, we had a tux rental place called Genghis Formal Wear. And I vividly remember getting fitted for a tux. I was actually a ring bearer in my Uncle Gilbert's wedding back in '86. And I think I still got a picture of me in that ring bearer tux. So I'm gonna post that if I can find it. But just the memories of those places and going to Cop Shoes with my Uncle Gilbert. And we had Foot Locker, and we would go to Foot Locker all the time because I don't know anybody that collected Stan Smith Adidas like my Uncle Gilbert. He always stayed in a fresh pair of Stan Smiths. And to this day, that's my favorite pair of kicks, and it's for sentimental purposes. And there was another spot in the mall called Athletic Attic, and that's where I would get my sports gear from. And we also had R&M Sporting Goods, which was also a place where you could get kicks. And that's whenever I would get my back to school kicks, I would go to R&M Sporting Goods. And for sports gear, if I was with my parents, we would go to Athletic Attic. And for as music places, the one place that I hold near and dear to my heart, we had a store in Northwoods Mall called Record Bar. And I spoke about this on a Childhood Stories episode since we last spoke. But again, me and my Uncle Gilbert went to the mall one Saturday. We were going to Sears to look at washers and dryers. And as we were pulled up in the parking lot, another guy pulled up in this dark blue Toyota Cressida in the space next to us, blasting Sucker MCs by Run DMC. And that was literally the first rap song I ever heard. And I was so captivated by DMC's voice. Uncle Gilbert saw me in the passenger seat looking stunned, like, what did I just hear? And where can I hear more of this? And he was like, you like that bow? I was like, yeah. He goes, I'll tell you what, after we get through at Sears, I'm gonna take you to Record Bar. Like, I'm gonna take you to Record Bar, and then I will buy you that tape. And back then, especially in the 80s, if when you wanted to get a rap tape, they had all of the tapes behind the counter. When you could, everywhere else in the store, you could just go and browse and pick up whatever you wanted. But the rap tapes would be behind the counter for some reason. And he got me the tape. It was Sucker MC's, I think it was the B-side to It's Like That. And that's the way it is. And he bought me that tape. And man, just the pivotal childhood memories that are anchored to my brain. And I have Northwoods Mall to thank for those memories. And we also had an arcade too that I would spend so many hours in. Actually, me and my Uncle Gilbert, because my parents really weren't into video games like me and my Uncle Gilbert were, because my Uncle Gilbert's 11 years younger than my dad. So we had a different bond than me and my dad simply because my Uncle Gilbert was significantly younger than my dad. So we tended to gravitate towards the same things, being that he was relatively young back then. And we would go to the arcade, and I think the arcade was called Aladdin's Castle, if I'm not mistaken. It was either there or Aladdin's Castle might have been in Charlestown Square Mall. But the amount of time, the amount of hours, much like 12 Kyle, the amount of hours that we would spend just blowing tokens in that arcade. And Pac-Man was his jam. Galaga was my favorite game. Man, I used to wreck shop in Galaga. And yeah, Northwoods Mall, man, the amount of memories that just are forever embedded in my brain. And if we didn't go to Northwoods Mall on Saturdays, then we would go to Charlestown Square Mall, which was probably about 10 minutes from Northwoods Mall off of I-26. And Charlestown Square Mall actually had a couple of other anchor department stores that weren't found at Northwoods Mall. Charlestown Square Mall had Montgomery Ward, and they had Service Merchandise. And they also had a movie theater, which was cool. And Dad's favorite store was, I think out of all of the malls, his favorite store was Service Merchandise because he was a big gearhead. So whatever tools they couldn't find in Sears, he would go to Service Merchandise and get them from there. And spending a lot of time at Charlestown Square Mall too. And it's still wild to me that that mall's no longer there. They tore that mall down and put up a movie theater. And now that movie theater is no longer there. They tore that down and put up apartments, which is the current setup for that area. I was like, man, things really ain't what they used to be, man. And it's just that piece of nostalgia is just completely gone. And you just shake your head. But yeah, that's the 80s mall experience for me in a nutshell, man. I would not trade those memories for anything. There's so many great memories from buying candy, getting the samples from the Pepperidge Farm tent, and my corn dog and my lemonade from Corn Dog on the Sticks. And if y'all have any 80s mall memories, please share those with me, because I would love to hear those, because we all have those memories from the past that we hold on to that really just shaped how we are today. I think that's going to do it for this episode of Since We Last Spoke with Danny Foxworth. Thank y'all for tuning in. Make sure you like, download, and subscribe to Since We Last Spoke with Danny Foxworth. Tell a friend to tell a friend about the podcast. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can find me at Danny Foxworth 843. There you can find videos for every episode of this podcast, as well as my Candle podcast, The Wicked Good Time with Danny Foxworth, my baseball podcast, At the Plate with Danny Foxworth, and Growing Up Low Country with Liz and Danny. And until next time, y'all be good. Peace.